I don't understand how a financial advisor can do true financial planning when they literally eliminate or don't even look at half of your balance sheet. They'll look at your assets. They won't look at your liabilities and say, hey, if we could free this up and free up $4,000 a month for you, oh, then you can invest more. And they completely overlook it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. As I also like to always thank the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the Doc Sites, for their support. If you have needs that they satisfy, please reach out to them. They are a great company to reach out to and learn more about what they can do for your practice. I also want to remind everybody about my event, Supercharge Your Dental Practice, September 26th and 27th in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Yes, we are back in Florida after taking a year in Scottsdale. It's at Pier 66, which is a brand new resort that just opened. So brand new facility. We've got 12 amazing speakers at your disposal who are going to entertain you and really educate you on how to grow your dental practice. Again, September 26th and 27th, Pier 66, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. You can go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com and you can save $100 by using the code RAVING, R-A-V-I-N-G, on your registration. Today's episode is titled Reduce Your Debt Fast Without Living on Ramen Noodles. My guest is Dr. Howard Polansky. Howard started his career as a dentist, first with the U.S. Navy before transitioning into private practice in Austin, Texas. A life-changing event in 2018 made Howard pivot away from dentistry and find a better way to create an impact in this world. Howard's new path was revealed when he was the first person he helped took a 30-year mortgage and paid it off in just 8 months. Howard helps families and business owners with a simple financial system so they can dramatically reduce their debt payments on items like mortgages, business loans, car payments, student loans, and even credit card bills. By managing these payments effectively, you maintain your lifestyle, keep more money each month, and achieve your dreams faster. If you want to learn how to become your own CFO, a cash flow optimizer, go to www.financiallyled.com, or you can text Howard. Howard will give his information out towards the end of the episode. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Howard Polansky. Howard, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, Len, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Now, I think because we actually met for the first time at ADMC in Scottsdale area in October, I think you know my sister, correct?
So, as I don't remember your sister, but we went to the same high school.
Where I went to school too. So I graduated in 1991 from Clarkstown South High School. That was when I graduated. So you graduated in 94 or 93?
94. Yeah. Yep. So it was Dr. Samuel Lynn, who was also same year as me. He's the one that put the connection together. I was like, dude, I don't remember anyone from high school. So it doesn't.
Got it. But you went to high school with my sister where I went to school, and Sam knows me through what I do. So you know Sam. So yes, small world if you think about it. So, well, this is obviously we met for the first time and we're both in the same field. We met for the first time in October, and now you're on my podcast. So I look forward to spending the next 30 plus minutes with you, sharing how you can help practices. So why don't you kind of talk about, interesting enough, I retired from dentistry because I had an outlet to do something differently. A lot of dentists are very envious of that because they would love to get out of clinical dentistry. I got out at 49 years old. Obviously you got out earlier, but there was obviously something that occurred that made you get out, I guess. So can you kind of talk about that? Because I think a lot of people out there now struggle with kind of how they can transition from dentistry, which they've done every day since they were in their 20s, to when they're 50 or 60. They would love to do this. So, you mentioned when we were just talking about Laura Brenner, and Laura is known for helping people find side gigs per se. So I'm curious, can you just share your story a little bit here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an integral part. So I just share now, sometimes life leaves you little clues and other times life hits you with a 2x4. My 2x4 moment, Sunday morning, Memorial Day weekend, 2018. Jaden, my older son, is 12 years old. I'm sitting next to his bed. He realizes I'm there and he says, "Dad." His voice is barely above a whisper. "Yeah, buddy." I lean over the bed. I put my ear over his mouth to make sure I can hear him. And he says 3 words I'll never forget. "Am I dying?" 12 days earlier, Jaden came home with a stomach ache. 3 days after the stomach ache, we were in the ICU at the Children's Hospital having emergency surgery. It was appendicitis that turned septic, 29 days in the hospital, 19 of them in the ICU, 8 straight days of sedation because he went to the operating room 5 times. After they take the tube out of his throat, they give him methadone and morphine to bring him down from the drugs he was on. So my 12-year-old son looks like a heroin addict coming down from a high. And the very first question he will only ask me are those 3 little words. Am I dying? My first breath was, did I hear him correctly? My second breath was, do not lose it right now. I look him in the eyes and I tell him, no, you're not dying. You've had prayers from thousands of people all around the world and you're going to be just fine. He looks at me. He knows I'm telling him the truth. He closes his eyes to get more rest. I walk outside the room and then I broke. I was already miserable from dentistry. I was burnt out. I was taking it out on everyone around me. But when I broke, only one thought seared into my mind. If life is this fragile and I'm unhappy with the path that I'm on, burn the ships. It's over. That's what I did. Sold my practice. September of 2018, walked away from the dental chair. You did it at 49. I did it at 42. Very different circumstances. Not the smartest way to leave dentistry. But I just knew that act 1 of my life was just done.
Wow, I did not expect that. And just so everybody knows, I had no idea the story. I didn't even touch on it before we recorded. So that's the first I'm hearing of it. So very powerful as a father. My son's now 17, going to be 18 years old, applying to college. How is your son now?
Thankfully, everything worked out fine. 18 inches less of intestines, some really cool scars. He has just finished his first semester in college, so now starting the spring semester. It just, knock on wood, no long-term health issues.
That's great. That's good to know. So when did you got out of dentistry? When did you pivot to this particular aspect of things? Because this is something unique that you never think a dentist would get into.
Yeah, it all kind of happened just by weird circumstance. So in this transition, as I'm getting out of dentistry, I'm sitting with another dentist because they do a bunch of sleep apnea. I had a few sleep cases. I needed to transfer them over. And while we're having lunch, he asked me an obvious question. How are you walking away? Now, what I didn't know when he asked me that question is that this dentist was going through a double divorce. Not only were they getting divorced from their spouse, the spouse was also a dentist and they owned the business 50-50. So he was bleeding money in every which way possible. But I answered him with one dumb comment, which changed everything for me. I kind of figured out how to make money move. Now, he gave me that Scooby-Doo look, and I tried to explain it that day. I didn't do a good job. But a few weeks later, I get the next statement in the mail for my house payment. And I send it to him as a joke, and I said, hey, take a look at this. Len, my house payment was $24.19. And he writes back, I see it. I don't understand how you can have a $24 house payment. I'm buying a condo next month. Will you be my coach? And as you shared in the introduction, he paid it off in 8 months instead of 30 years. And so he tells his business partner, I tell a friend of mine, and now instead of listening to my head, I'm listening to my heart. And it says the way you're going to make an impact in this world, it's not dentistry. It's not doing another root canal. It's not doing another crown. The way you're going to make an impact in this world is by teaching people, I now call it the new rules of finance and the system around it so that they can get to their freedom sooner. However the audience defines freedom for themselves, that's not for me to decide. It's for you to decide. But how do you just do it and get this shortcut way that you can potentially take decades of time off to get there?
Wow. That's really interesting. So let's jump into some of the topics we wanted to talk about today. So talk about, where you should focus versus where banks want you to focus or vice versa. So talk about that because I know that's a big topic we wanted to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you go in and get a loan, the one thing that everyone just cares about is, well, what's the interest rate? And when you really boil it down and understand how this all works, the banks are being magicians by letting you focus on the interest rate. It's the same way that a magician says, look over here, yet the whole trick is happening where you're not looking. Okay. And so because everyone's so focused on the interest rate, what you're missing is what really drives how long a debt is going to take to pay off and how much interest you end up paying. And the real factor that you want to look at is what is the balance of the debt remaining, not the interest rate. So, Len, if you're okay, I just want to do like a super easy example to kind of illustrate the point. Is that cool with you?
Sure.
Okay. So imagine that you go into a bank and you just said, I'd like to take out a loan. And they say, congrats, we can do that, no problem. We have two different interest rates. One is at 4%, one is at 14%. Which one would you choose?
4% just by those numbers.
Yeah. I mean, that part's not a trick question, but you need a couple more pieces of information. So number one, you're going to take the loan out for a year. Number two, you're going to take the loan out for $100. And so at the end of the year, the difference of 104 and 114 being $10, you don't care. Even when you were working, even when you were a dental student, you didn't care about the $10. Even if the balance was $1,000 that you took out, the 1040 versus 1140, that doesn't matter either. But if you get up to 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, now all of a sudden the interest rate becomes meaningful. And so I want people to understand from that simple illustration is that it's not the interest rate. It's the balance of the debt the interest rate is applied to. And so if we have the capability of manipulating the balance of the debt and bringing it from 100,000 to 50,000 to 10,000 really fast, the interest rate becomes meaningless. The problem is that the system is set up for you to have these fixed payments every single month so that even if you decided to put $10,000 against a $100,000 balance, what's your payment next month? It's exactly the same.
Yep.
Yeah. So it doesn't feel like you've gotten anywhere. I mean, yes, you've shortened down the time in terms of having to pay the loan off, but from a cash flow perspective, you've screwed yourself.
Yep.
Because you have the same fixed payment, now you have less liquidity.
Got it. So I think the takeaway from that is the interest rate doesn't always matter. There's other terms that you need to pay attention to as well. So can you go over what those are so people are aware of it?
Yeah. So when we just boil it all down, forget about the marketing, forget about everything else. We're utilizing lines of credit in a strategic, effective manner. So some of you might be familiar with business lines of credit, where if you've had your practice for a while, hopefully you have one in place. Rule of thumb is 10% of your collection. So if you're a $2 million practice, you should be able to get a $200,000 business line of credit. A more common example, if you don't have a business, is a credit card. That is a line of credit. It's an open-ended tool that money is flowing through. Okay. Now, how I got down to my $24 house payment is that I had a home equity line of credit on my house. I don't have a mortgage. It's an open-ended tool that I can literally throw all my money into. And when expenses come due, I can take out whatever I need to for my expenses, but I'm leaving the surplus inside the line and lowering the balance of the debt to lower the amount of interest I have to pay.
Got it. Makes sense. Any other topics or any others, based on what I just asked you, anything else you want to add to that?
I mean, I can go over a couple of examples that I've helped, clients with. As much as people may just feel bogged down in the math. I mean, here's one that just following up with today is dentist reached out. Their practice note was $20,000 a month.
That's
20 grand. I don't care. I don't care how well your practice is doing. That's a big chunk of money every single month that you have to worry about. It took a lot of maneuvering. I'm not going to get into the details here, but eventually I had to speak to the bookkeeper and the CPA. And they were set up against me like a good cop, bad cop type of situation. And I said, look, this dentist has got, call it $500,000 left. They got a $20,000 monthly payment. But by rearranging all of this stuff, now we've given flexibility to the dentist where the payment month one is now $4,000. And the bad cop bookkeeper was just like, well, what was the point of doing all of this? That dentist could have taken all of their profit and put it against the debt and paid it off faster. I said, I 100% agree with you. It would shorten the time. How much was the profit last year? 120 grand. I said, great. So we now bring it from $500 to $380,000. What's the payment the next month? She says, $20,000. I said, how the hell does that help? And you just lost $120,000 of liquidity in case you have a couple of bad months. So which is easier to pay, 20 or 4? And that's when the good cop CPA is like, well, 4. And I'm like, exactly. Fast forward now, 9 months. 9 months later, that $500,000 debt is now down to 100 grand. That $20,000 payment is now $800.
So can you just talk about, because that obviously for people that's going to shock them what you just said. You know, $500,000 8 months ago is now down to 120 and their payment's $800. So can you talk about the mechanism behind that? Because as someone who's not into this that much, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So every loan, it does not matter what loan you take out, every single loan, whether that is a mortgage, car payment, student loans, or a line of credit, all the bank is doing is what is the balance at the end of the day multiplied by the interest rate on a daily basis. Every single loan. The difference between your mortgage or your student loans and a line of credit is that the only thing that you are required to pay is just the interest on a line of credit. Now go back to how we started our conversation after my son and all of that. Can we manipulate the balance of the debt? In this case, for this dentist, we manipulated it from a $500,000 balance. 9 months later, we're down to 100. So now this dentist is only paying interest on $100,000. And that $800 is just the interest that's accrued over the next 30 days. There's more to the strategy in terms of manipulating that even further. But now there's just far more flexibility. There's literally $19,000 a month freed up.
But you also,
dentist.
Got it. Yep. I know, and I understand that. But how did they? So to go from 500,000 to 100,000+, that means they have to put that money towards there. So if you don't have that money, you can't manipulate that. Then you have to have the free cash flow to be able to do that. I'm assuming that.
Some of it was savings. That instead of having savings in one account and this line of credit, smush it all together, because with a line of credit, I always say it's an open-ended tool. If I put that money into the line of credit today, I can get the money back out tomorrow. And so instead of having your money siloed in separate areas, we're smushing everything together and merging it together. Because I guarantee you, whatever you think you're earning, you can save far more in interest if you can smush everything together.
Interesting. So you're consolidating the debt, basically.
We're not necessarily consolidating. In a sense, we are. If we have several fixed debt payments, so let's just say on the personal side, we had a mortgage and we had a couple of car payments and we had the student loan, and we had a tremendous amount of appreciation in our house that we can now access that equity. We can smush everything together. We can free up those fixed payments. And now, yes, there's going to be interest charged, but the interest that's being charged compared to what your fixed payments were, there's going to be a delta, and that's the cash flow that's freed up.
Got it. So people are listening to this and they say they have a financial advisor, they say they have an accountant, they have all these people managing their money. Why? And you mentioned an accountant in this conversation you were having, good cop, bad cop. Why don't they do this? Or do they not think this way? What's the reasoning behind this?
So the answer is yes, and There's a couple different reasons. Number one is maybe this didn't happen with you, Len, but I've seen enough heads nodding silently to say, how does this guy know what my conversation is with my accountant every single year? The first thing is that I am speaking the language of money. Your CPA is speaking the language of money, but we're speaking different dialects. Your CPA is speaking the language of the IRS and the tax code and trying to minimize how much you have to pay to the government. But you live in the real world. And you can't pay people with seashells and with love. You actually have to pay them with the cash that flows through your business. And so when there is a delta, when there is a difference between your accountant saying, or telling you, saying, I have a profit of $300,000 in my practice, and I don't see the money, where did it go? 95% of the time, it's because of the fixed debt payments that are in the practice. And so if your accountant could take 15 seconds and say, when you make a payment on your debt, not all of it shows up on your profit and loss. Only the portion that is interest shows up on your P&L statement. The rest of it's paying down the loan. That explains 95% of it. So that's part one. Part two is financial advisors. The reason why financial advisors don't talk about this traditionally is they don't get paid on it. They get paid via assets under management. And I'm not poo-pooing financial advisors. There are a lot of good ones out there. But when you ask them in terms of what's their incentive is to take your extra money and grow it for the future, because that's how they get paid. I don't understand how a financial advisor can do true financial planning when they literally eliminate or don't even look at half of your balance sheet. They'll look at your assets. They won't look at your liabilities and say, hey, if we could free this up and free up $4,000 a month for you, then you can invest more. And they completely overlook it. And so again, I wanted to be clear, Len, that I'm not bashing the system. Everyone has to eat. But think of it this way. Your financial advisor is your offensive coordinator. But offense sells tickets, but defense wins championships. And so if you have a financial advisor on your team, which I hope you do, let them grow and multiply the money. That's not what I do. I can be your defensive coordinator and say, I'm jumping over a 6-foot bar every month. How do we bring this down to 3.5 to 4 feet? How do we take what the average dentist spends per month on a personal side is roughly $17,000 a month? How do we bring that down to $12,000, $11,000, $10,000 a month? And now all of a sudden I have all of this extra cash flow where you go back to, let's go back to the name of the podcast, raving patience. You usually have raving patience when you're relaxed and you're feeling good. Usually you're feeling a lot better when you're a lot less stressed about finances. And this is where getting rid of those fixed debt payments and having that extra cash could then generate more raving fans because now you're more relaxed. You're like, I don't have to jump over this giant hurdle every freaking month.
Got it. No, got it. That makes sense. So talk to me how you work with clients. What is the process you go through? I'm curious because I think people are going to say, well, how does he do it? So I'm curious how you work with a client in that extent.
Sure. So it's always, when someone first reaches out to me, it's 100% free in terms of what I call a clarity call. I have to get the numbers out of you to see what the heck's going on. Can I even help you? What I'm really looking for is, business or personal, doesn't matter, is what's the money coming in? What are your total expenses? And then from those total expenses, how much of that is associated with fixed debt, aka the mortgages, the practice loans, the equipment loans, the student loans. And then I am basically doing just all of the mental math to say, how do we manipulate or move the debt around so that if your student loans is $1,600 a month, how do we eliminate that fixed $1,600 a month? And now potentially it goes down to $400. because of we only have to pay the interest. So that's what I'm doing, is saying, like, if we are able to move things around, it's not a loan consolidation. It's not one of those 800 numbers on TV. We're taking the debt, we're paying it off. We're just paying it off in a different flow.
Got it. So, are there any risks to doing it like this? I mean, again, there's got to be, if this was something that was that simple, it would be something that was more, I want to say, mainstream per se. I don't want to, you understand what I'm saying? It sounds a little hokey dokey. I mean, so are there any risks to someone who tries to do this? I'm just wondering.
100% there is. But let's go back. I want to answer in terms of why is this not more mainstream? Think about who this is hurting. I am lowering the amount of interest you pay, which means I am literally taking money out of banks' pockets. Why would they ever share this with you?
Right, because they're in the business of making money. Yeah, of course.
Exactly. So there's no incentive for that. If anything, there's a disincentive for them to teach this to you. But there are 4 risks. Number 1, you have to have the cash flow. If your income is not greater than your expenses on a consistent basis, this does not work. That's not to say you need a new roof, something happens with the car, you go negative 1 month, that's fine, but on a consistent basis. Number 2, the interest rate is variable. Okay. And that's the part that freaks people out. They're used to saying, this is how much money comes in. This is my budget. The next thing I want is, the next widget I want is X. It costs Y. Does it fit within my budget that I already have? I'm blowing all of that up because it's now a variable payment.
So are you refinancing these loans then? Is that what you're doing also?
Not necessarily.
Well, if someone's paying on a fixed loan with a fixed rate, fixed monthly money amount, how are you getting that to a variable number? You have to do something there, correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can call it a refinance. So if we go back to me, and I'll just use me as an example, I went from a quote unquote first position traditional fixed mortgage and refinanced into a first position home equity line of credit, which has a variable interest rate. So if you want to use my example, in 2021, my average house payment was $350 a month. In 2022, the Fed was increasing the rates in a dramatic fashion, as we're all well aware. My average house payment, even with all the increases, was $500 a month. Wow. In 2023, even with the high interest rate, it was $600 a month. Which is easier to pay? My variable payment is $600 or whatever your fixed payment is. I'm not even going to ask you, but I know it's higher than $600.
Yeah, it is.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
So That's what I'm saying. It's like I'm not asking which one's paying down the debt. I'm just asking which is easier to pay, $600 or whatever your number is.
$600, obviously.
Because I understand the risks of knowing how to manipulate the debt. My monthly cash burn is far less than what it was having a fixed payment. Number 3, a line of credit can get closed. Everyone goes back to 2008, 2009, and there's a reason why I don't like to work with Mace Bank and Hell's Cargo and Crank of America and Capital One, because they're the national banks. They're the ones that get the headlines, which is why you don't want to work with them. Work with regional banks, community banks, credit unions, because they're your neighbors. They know what's going on literally locally in your economy because they're right there. The final risk, the most concerning risk that I have, is that you, whoever's listening in this audience, you raid the piggy bank. I've got an acquaintance. I use that term very loosely. At one point, the husband was part of the Watch of the Month Club, and they still have a car lease payment of $1,300 a month. Now, they do just fine. I could care less what they spend it on, but if you got them in a corner and asked them why do you spend on some of this stuff, it doesn't take long to get to the truth. To impress our circle of friends. Now, there's no end game to that. So if I showed this couple the system, they would start it, they'd raid the piggy bank, and they'd come back to me and say, Howard, this doesn't work. And I just look at them and say, no, you're just an idiot. You're an idiot that happens to make a lot of money, but you're still an idiot. And so you know you better than I know you. And if this idea of now having access to a giant wad of cash, your next thought is, I'm going to go buy my next Lamborghini.
Not for you.
Well, unless you already have the cash flow that you could purchase a Lamborghini, don't do that. There's got to be respect to this. And when you respect it, it can work fantastically well.
Got it. So we're winding down on time, and I want to get to my Q&A. So is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to cover in terms of the content?
No, we hit the big thing in terms of, I'm just the defensive coordinator. I'm not looking to take over as a CPA. I'm not looking to take over as a financial advisor. This is a very, very unique niche idea concept in terms of saying, can I live the same lifestyle, but it can cost me a heck of a lot less than I thought. For the average dentist that I have helped in the first 12 months, their cash flow improves $65,000 a year. For those that are W-2 employees, not business owners, it still has been $38,000 a year. You just have to understand in terms of, you're a good steward of your money. You've got an emergency account. You're putting away for retirement. You have this extra money. You're like, now I have no idea what to do. But I've got this debt. I'd love for it to be gone or minimized or whatever it is. Is there a way to work around this? That's the ideal person to work with.
I had one other question real quick, and how does the credit score of a person affect this?
It does. Do you mean before or after?
Before, during, after, before. I mean, so before, let's start with before. You don't have a great credit score. These banks are not going to work with you, obviously.
Correct. Yeah. So the credit score should be over 700 to have a really good wide array of opportunities. Loan to value is going to matter. Usually it has to be under 50%. Some banks are closer to 45 or 43%. That's on gross income. And then you are opening a new, just like if you get a new credit card, your credit score is going to go down a little bit until you show some that you're good with it. Same thing's going to happen here, but usually I'm working with people that they're not going to need to finance anything in the next 6 months. So even if your credit score went down 50 points, give it about 3 months and it comes right back.
Got it. Okay. All right. Let's use some time we have available. Howard, we're going to do a lightning round of some questions here. Okay. So the point of this is to answer them very quickly. All righty. So first question, what is one skill or trait you feel is imperative to being successful?
Tenacity.
Okay. What methods do you use to keep focused?
I will actually take quite a few breaks during the day.
Okay. All right. Well, when you were a kid, what's the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up?
I would never want to be it now, but it was president.
Interesting. Okay. All right. What piece of advice would you give to graduates who want to become startup practice owners?
I wish I could have spoken to you 4 years earlier and really thought, is this the way you want to have your life go?
Okay. How do you develop partnerships, key partnerships now?
Truly by collaboration. If this was something that was interest of you, Len, is like, is there a way for me to help you so that you could see it for yourself and then have that validation to refer others?
That's a good answer. What is the smartest investment you've ever made?
Getting out of dentistry for my own mental sanity.
That's good. That's good. Let's see what else we got here. What distracts you the most every day?
Oof. Television for sure. Let's just leave it there.
Okay. If you were to write a book about yourself, what would you call it?
Let's go with a leopard can change its spots.
All right. That's good. What is something you've learned from the most successful person you know?
Um, It is wealth comes in a variety of things. Both, not only is it money, it's also health, it's time, it's freedom.
Okay. Do you have a hard time telling people no?
Maybe my kids and my partner, but other people, no, not an issue.
Okay. Has anybody in your network been important to your journey?
Uh, yes. And I have let them know, but I don't need to share the name here.
Okay. What business related book has inspired you the most? Or another way of asking is, what is your favorite book?
My favorite book, The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker.
Secrets of a Millionaire Mind. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. What profession do you think is the most undervalued today?
Oh boy. We may sit here a while. Okay, no, I've got it. It is I am part of a group called Front Row Dads. It was started by John Vroman nearly 10 years ago. The tagline is family men with businesses, not businessmen with families.
Oh, okay.
I'll let you look it up from there. Frontrowdads.com.
Okay. How do you define success?
Success is I'll give it a different way. Being rich is only looking at money. Being wealthy is in terms of looking at time. Okay. So for me these days is success is how can I utilize the time how I want to?
I like that. Last question. I ask this to everyone. What is one subscription, either personal or business, that you could not live without?
I wish I could say Netflix, but they're too addictive. Yikes. It's probably Microsoft 365 these days, unfortunately.
All right, everybody has their good choices there. That's a good one. So, Howard, this is a really interesting topic. I think there's a lot more stuff that we can talk about. How can people, if they're listening to this, they go, hey, I would love to reduce my mortgage or my business expense, my business loans. What's the best way they can reach out to you to find out more?
Yeah, so look, you can text me, you can call me. My phone number, this is my cell phone, 512-608-1020. The website is financiallyled.com. If you want to grab the ebook, it's financiallyled.com/ebook and name, email, and you'll get a copy of it and go from there to see if this is something that's intriguing to you.
All right, that's awesome. This was really good, guys. If his commentary really rang true or really ruffled your feathers, please reach out to Howard. I'm sure he'd be able to assist you and talk to you about how he can help reduce the debt you have and not having to live on ramen noodles. Again, if you liked it, please recommend us. Please review us. Please let the world know about the Raving Patients podcast. I want to thank the sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the doc sites. Remember my event, Supercharge Your Dental Practice, superchargeyourdentalpractice.com. Save $100 on registration with the code RAVING, RAVING. And as I end every single one of my episodes, remember, your reputation matters. Howard, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thank you, Len.